Welcome back to Vintage Films. I'm George, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Mr. Floyd Fry, host of the Populist Podcast. Floyd, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, George. I'm excited. I've watched these vintage movie YouTube clips that you do, and I really enjoy your coverage, and I enjoy your attitude towards them and your take on them. I really think you have something that's different and very entertaining, and I am absolutely honored that you asked me to come on.
Well, thank you very much, and we're honored to have you. And the movie we are doing today is a cool one. It is from 1948. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Yes, sir. It is a good movie. So, Floyd, I am interested. What is your take on this film? What is your background? What do you like about this movie?
So this movie, 1948, I was born in 78. So this movie's 30 years older than me. This movie, there's two things that really stick out to me about this movie and my memories. One of them is I remember this being a movie that in the mid 80s, okay, so you're talking, I'm 6 years old in 84 or something. This is a perfect example of a movie that would have been on at an odd time, like 3 p.m. on a Sunday, on like some strange UHF channel. You know what I mean? It was one of those that was just playing, and they did it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. We actually had a TV that had a dial, and you had to turn it to UHF to get the UHF channels on the antenna. Yes. And I can remember, maybe not quite for this film, but I can remember, oh, something's coming on. I got to turn it over to this so I can get the channel I wanted to watch it. It might have been this movie that I've done that before. So, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And then the other thing with this movie, this was the first movie that I can remember as a kid, a very young child. It was okay to watch this scary movie because it was funny. Even though the characters are still the characters. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because what I like about it is that the monsters still do their thing. They're not treated in a slapsticky way. They still are the Wolfman, the Frankenstein, Dracula still do what they do. And the comedy and the levity comes out of these two guys who were absolute brilliant masters of their comedy style they had. Yeah. And, it could have gone away where they didn't really mesh, but I think in this situation they meshed well. And I think that's a big reason why it was successful.
And honestly, if you really kind of get into it, it really should have been Abbott and Costello Meet the Wolfman. I mean, he's arguably the protagonist, right?
Right. Yeah, you got a point. And when I was watching it, I noticed how Frankenstein honestly isn't in the movie that much. He's like in a scene early, another one kind of in the middle, then he has a big presence at the end. But I was doing a little, watching some making of videos, and I noticed that the original plan was to call the movie The Brain of Frankenstein. And I think that's why when they decided to call it Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, they were keeping Frankenstein probably for a marketing thing and keeping that original title alive in some way. Because the plot, as we know, involves they want to take Costello's brain and put it in Frankenstein so he can be docile and controllable, which is hilarious, by the way. Yeah. And I think you're right that it's really the Wolfman is the protagonist, and even Dracula has a bigger presence in the story. Absolutely. But I got to wonder if that original brain plot device is the reason why they did it.
I didn't know that. That makes absolute sense. And then I also don't know, in 1948, maybe Frankenstein was a larger character, which is interesting because he certainly isn't now. I mean, Dracula and Wolfman or wolf werewolves have certainly been, much more profitable as characters than Frankenstein is today. But at the time, maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, and you're right. I hadn't thought of that, but there's a good chance that would have been let's put our marquee character front row center. Yeah. And that's an interesting point you made about how today Frankenstein isn't as prevalent, and you're right. Because with the Wolfman, you can have anybody become a werewolf, and with CGI and all the cool stuff you can do to make a wolf look menacing. Yeah. But there's really not much more you can do with Frankenstein other than it's been done a million times.
Now there's also, and we're getting a little bit of a tangent here. Sorry, George.
No,
but
worries.
there's also kind of a thought too that you could go to where the Frankenstein, the character, doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, we don't see a lot of movies of that, but I do think we see Frankenstein in like Michael Myers and the Terminator and things like that. You know what I mean? There's some roots in that.
Yeah, you're right. They definitely the silent killer, the
kind of created,
created by man that's going to come get us. Yeah, that is good. So another thought I had, I want to get your take on it, is back to Abbott and Costello and their comedy style. When you were a kid, did the jokes get you like work for you? Because I remember the jokes making me laugh, and it's funny to watch it as an adult, and they still made me laugh. And I like the idea how it doesn't matter. It's accessible to every age and everybody. And I just want to get your thoughts on Abbott and Costello.
100%. I even, after I watched the movie a couple days ago, I even texted a couple of my friends and said, I watched this Abbott and Costello movie and legitimately laughing. I mean, It's funny.
Yeah.
The unveiling scene of Dracula, I mean, that is funny.
There's some like one-liners. It's kind of deal where Abbott was the straight man, and then Costello, he'd set Costello up, and Costello would hit a zinger out there. And I didn't like write much of them down, but like one of them was like when the casket was opening and Costello was the only one that was around to see it, and it made creaking sounds, and then he's calling for Abbott to come back, and Abbott comes back, and he's like, that thing was going and Abbott says, oh, it was just the wind. And then Costello says, well, it should get oiled. It was little zinger jokes like that thrown throughout this thing.
I thought one of the funniest lines in that was I work for two unions.
Yeah.
You can only work 8 hours a day. I work for two unions.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny. You know what struck me watching this when I thought about that was Costello is this shorter, rotund guy, and that has continued. I mean, you think about Buddy Hackett, Jonathan Winters, and even today, Jack Black, Zach Galifianakis, Josh Gad. I mean, that I guess model of a comedian has been something that has been very lasting.
It's a brilliant formula that has worked, and still, like you said, still does. So. But again, back to what the monsters. Which one is your favorite of the three? I'm curious about that.
I'm going to go back to that. I mean, are you talking about this movie or overall?
Okay. Let's go with this movie, then we can go to overall.
Okay. Yeah. So this movie, without a doubt, is Lon Chaney Jr. I mean, and it's the Wolfman. I mean, that character is somewhat intriguing. I mean, he's really interesting in the movie. He probably has the most lines of almost anyone other than Abbott and Costello, even more than some of the female leads. So without a doubt, he was the one that when I'm watching this, I was very intrigued by it and the most memorable of the three.
And he actually has a kind of a plot device that gives him a lot of gravitas in the story. He's trying to stop the Dracula and Frankenstein from being discovered and unboxed in Florida, which is hilarious. Florida, by the way. And he's under duress. He's in London. He's trying to get there in time. He doesn't get there in time. And then he can't really do much because every night he knows he's going to turn into a werewolf. And he's trying to stop this from happening, stop Dracula. But every time he gets a little leg up, the moon comes out and he wolfs out. Right. And you can see throughout the movie, he's like just stressing out and trying to make this work and just can't do it. And that's a compelling character, I think. For me, though, I will say that I really love Bela Lugosi as Dracula. And it's funny because he only played Dracula for the first time in the 1931 Dracula, and then he played it in this. And that he's played other vampires, but he never played Dracula other than that first movie and this one, and there was 17-year difference between them. Yeah, but when we think of Dracula, we think of Lugosi.
Oh, absolutely.
You
That,
know,
that's very interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that
yeah, I looked that up. Yeah, I looked that up, and then also the funny thing is they didn't want to give him the part. I found that out. Apparently, because so much time had lapsed, they didn't want to give it to Lugosi because they were like, "You're yesterday's news," and he had the fight for the role.
He's old. He's old
Yeah.
in this too. I mean, he's
Right.
almost he's like late 60s or something when he's playing that role. And kind of along those lines, and back to the title too, I did find it interesting that Frankenstein's the one character not played by the original actor. Glenn Strange, that played Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he had played in, this was like the third time he had played Frankenstein, and was in House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein, both maybe.
Yeah.
Are both of those movies? I think they're both movies. And,
Yeah,
and one of those, he was in the movie with Karloff.
Right. Yeah, you're right. He would definitely was already in the role. And you know, we're looking back from now to back then, and we know that Karloff has been kind of immortalized in the role. But I'm thinking back at the time, and audiences would have been used to Glenn Strange being in the role because they would have seen him more recently.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense for him to be in this. And quite honestly, he looks good. He looks like, it doesn't take much to put the deal on and the makeup and have him do all that.
There's some Hollywood lore too about when he was in those movies with Karloff, that Karloff off camera and even after filming, that they kind of got together and Karloff mentored him on how to play the monster.
That's interesting. I can see that. It kind of comes out, So you were going to say earlier about I asked you about the monsters in this movie, but then as it goes beyond this into like a more modern day, what kind of monsters are you looking that you enjoy? I'm curious.
I would probably, of these three, I would probably go with Dracula. I love the book. I love the original book. Now, the original Frankenstein's good too, but I love the original Bram Stoker's original Dracula, and I think the character is intriguing. And I think that Hollywood has done at times a very good job and at times a very bad job at reenacting this character. So I would go with Dracula as my favorite of the three.
That's
what about you?
You know, I'm kind of team werewolf, to be honest with you. Like, they've done like Underworld, and they've done movies where they put vampires against the werewolf, and I like werewolf lore. I like the fact that, like I said before, how any character can become a werewolf. And plus, I've read some pretty good werewolf novels, and I would, if I'm going to pick up a horror book and it's got either a vampire or a werewolf in it, and I'm asked to choose one or the other, I'm probably going to go to the werewolf one. Not that I don't like vampire stuff. I think they're pretty cool, but I'm going to probably lean toward the werewolf in this.
And now, kind of related to that and the movie, it was like right about the same time I was watching that this week, watching the Abbott and Costello. I was watching part of I don't know if you've seen this documentary that Shudder has on the 80s horror movies. It's called like Into the Darkness or Search for the Darkness or something like that. It's like 4.5 hours long.
Whoa.
And,
no, I have not.
And they cover, I mean, I don't know how many they cover. It's probably hundreds or at least 100 movies. They just have these little like 3-minute like clips on the movies and people talking about them. And one of the things that they talk about was they compared The Howling and Werewolf in London. And I thought it was interesting. They covered the transformation. And then when I'm watching Abbott and Costello and watching that transformation, it was interesting seeing that evolution. And people were probably like blown away by that little stop motion, footage or whatever with the hair coming out and things. So I just thought that was funny that I kind of ran across all those at the same time and kind of experienced the transformation of a werewolf over 4 decades or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is definitely interesting. And it's good you mentioned The Howling. I remember that movie when I was a kid, and it was like, that freaked me out. It was a good movie, but I remember the wolf out scene in that was very vivid. And so
the wolf design in that may be my favorite.
Right.
The design of the werewolf in that is fantastic.
Yeah. That might inform why I kind of like werewolf, especially the wolf out stuff to this day. It probably was that movie. So let's kind of segue into the third act of this one, because in my opinion, that's where it really picks up, because a lot of this movie is Costello. He sees things early on, and he's trying to convince Abbott throughout the whole movie that stuff's happening. And Abbott, of course, being a straight man, doesn't believe anything,
Right.
and he's always constantly, putting Costello down. But then by the third act is when it all combinates in that castle on that island, and there, in my opinion, is some of the funnest monster action of a Universal monster movie, just in that stuff that's happening at the end where they finally, Abbott comes around, and after he sees Dracula turn from a bat into Dracula, that's when he finally understands this is happening. And from that moment on, there's just hijinks going on there. They strap Costello down and have to get him unhooked, and then they're running around, and Frankenstein's chasing them, and then the Wolfman and Dracula are fighting. That was even cool. It's like you got Wolfman and Dracula fighting, you got Frankenstein chasing them, and it was. I'm curious as your thoughts on that. Did that work for you?
Yes, I absolutely, because there was a point where, I didn't remember. I've seen the movie when I was a kid, but I did not remember it. And there was a point where I was like, are they really going to have them fight? And I even thought, I was like, I bet that was cool for 12-year-olds in 1948.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love also just like, especially in some of those later scenes, it's really intriguing to me how this movie, and tons of movies at the time, were set up very play-like. It's very enter stage left, exit stage right. You know what I mean? It's all sets. Which, by the way, the sets are fantastic. When you have the scene where the two female leads are in the room, the tapestry and the woodwork and the lighting and their costumes, that art direction is pretty awesome. And so it really tells you, too, that they were, putting time and money and the much quality as they could into the movie, which paid off, of course. But yeah, the monsters' actions on the island and everything, how it kind of came down, I thought it was great. Again, very funny. Yeah,
it's hilarious. And to kind of jump on the point you made there about looking like a stage play, one thing I did some looking up here. I got some notes here, and I found out that they originally were planning this to be a Broadway play, like years before they made the movie. And the reason why it wasn't a play was they were too busy. They had the radio show and they were doing this, and they never materialized into a play. And then somebody dusted that idea off several years later and said, "Oh, why don't we put these guys in a movie together with these monsters?" And that was the genesis of the whole idea. It started with that. And so
interesting. I'll tell you too, the setup for the sequel thing caught me off guard. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was coming.
When it happened, this like memory cap broke in my head, and I was like, oh yes, the Invisible Man. I totally remember that now, but I did not see it coming, completely forgot about it. But when it happened, it was like I had an epiphany, and the memory came flooding back in from. Did you notice the voice was Vincent Price?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I was actually I didn't look it up. I was actually going to ask you if it was 100% because I thought it sounded like him. So
yeah, it was. I had to look that up because I'm a big Vincent Price fan, and I was like, that has got to be him. So I went on IMDb, and it says uncredited Vincent Price is with me. So
that's cool.
Pretty cool. So, any other thoughts on Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein? Do you got any other things you'd like to mention? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, two real quick. First of all, absolutely love the animated intro. Now, I don't know if that is something that Abbott and Costello did, if that was kind of like their intro. I love that animated intro. And I personally am a person that's a fan of animated intros for live action movies. One that jumps out to me I love is City Slickers. I don't know if you've ever seen City Slickers.
Yeah, that's great.
I love those animated intros. And when that came on, I was like, this is pretty good. I enjoyed that.
Nice.
The other thing is the director, Charles Burton. Crazy prolific. I mean, one of his obituaries said that he directed 580 TV episodes.
Wow.
and 70 feature films. But they were all prolific back then. You know what I mean? I mean, they had like 35 or 40 episodes a season, which is just absolutely crazy now. But very, very prolific director. He directed, like I said, tons of stuff.
That's great. I did read that he was good friends with Abbott and Costello, which is a big reason why he directed this, but I didn't realize he had that much credit to him, so that's really interesting. Yeah, I enjoy this film. Like I said, I had watched it, like, for some reason it had been on Netflix, like, way back when Netflix first started streaming, and I remember watching it, like, late at night. I threw it on, and that was the last time I'd seen it, and before that I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. So this viewing of it was kind of fresh. It was like a lot of things I forgot, and a lot of them came back to me. So I really enjoyed the chance to revisit it, and it was a good choice. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you having me on again, George. I really, really enjoyed it. I did too. I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, even when I suggested it. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's funny, it's entertaining, it looks great. You know what I mean? It's historic. I mean, you know, it's like National Film Registry. It was really fun to revisit.
Yep, absolutely, and a good time. And I recommend it to anyone watching who hasn't seen it before, hasn't seen it in a long time. If you're looking for a good, fun hour and 25-minute or so watch, Abbott and Costello. I got it on Amazon Prime for cheap rental, so go watch it. Floyd, while you're on, would you like to tell us a little bit about the Pop List podcast and just kind of let us know what it's about and where people can find it?
Sure. So I run the Pop List podcast. A little bit of an odd title, I know. I've thought about changing the title before, actually. But the reason I have it is, like, I started out as a pop culture podcast. So, like, the first episode I ever did was 10 movies you didn't know were based on books. Then it kind of evolved into more of a history, mystery, true crime, interesting fact type of thing. And I just make a list and I run down, different entries based on whatever that subject is. I've done everything from hero dogs to, serial killers that were never caught and ghost ships and all kinds of things. So our motto is listen, learn, enjoy. So if you're interested in hearing some interesting facts and my voice droning on, I have a pretty solid group of people that really enjoy the Pop List. So if something sounds like something you would enjoy, check it out. And you can find me anywhere pretty much. Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify, I'm pretty much everywhere where podcasts are. So.
Sounds great. I count myself as one of those people that really enjoy it. I look forward to your episodes whenever you put them out. I will put a link in the notes below. So if you are interested in checking out the Pop List, please go down and hit the link and check it out. I highly recommend it. All right. So that is our movie, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Good stuff. Floyd, thank you very much for joining me. I really enjoyed having you on the show, and it was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thanks, George. Appreciate it.
All right. So until the next time, have a good one.